Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to my global audience. Walter Cotton here with another, no, this is not another installment of the Patriot Report. This year we're doing something different. This year I'm doing something different. I'm not doing the Patriot Report, I'm doing my Patriot Report. I got a brand new studio. Let me let you check it out. I got multiple cameras here because we've got some fast and furious information that we need to share with you. Check out my multiple camera angles. Voila. Like for those of you who think that I'm kind of playing pocket pool down here at the bottom, you will notice that I'm controlling the environment with my mouse. But I'm really excited about this new environment that I've created because I think it's going to empower me with the ability to bring content to you in a clearer, more concise fashion. Today, I am going to deal with the hard problem of the 15% promised increase in small disadvantaged business contracting that President Biden made at the centennial, the 100th memorial of the Black Wall Street massacre in Tulsa back in June of 2021. And for those of you who don't remember that particular event, you don't remember exactly what I'm talking about, let me let you have a listen to what the president said then to refresh your memory.
Second, small businesses are the engines of our economy and the glue of our communities. As president, my administration oversees hundreds of billions of dollars in federal contracts for everything from refurbishing decks of aircraft carriers to installing railings in federal buildings to professional services. We have a thing called, I won't go into it all, but there's not enough time now, but I'm determined to use every taxpayer's dollar that is assigned to me to spend going to American companies and American workers that build American products. And as part of that, I'm going to increase the share of the dollars the federal government spends to small disadvantaged businesses, including black and brown small businesses. Right now it calls for 10%. I'm going to move that to 15% of every dollar spent will be spent below.
And like everybody in that audience, when I heard the president say that, I was elated. And then immediately following that, I got a sinking feeling in my stomach because I knew, based on private knowledge, that there was a hard problem associated with the promise that the president made. And that hard problem was directly related to the fact that there is currently case law on the books which makes it ostensibly illegal for the contracting officers to do a race-based set aside. More on that as we move forward. But I started tracking that promise that was connected to the hard problem because I wanted to see what the agencies were going to do. I wanted to see what the administration was going to do, what the advocacy community was going to do in light of this $100 billion promise of wealth transfer to black and brown people. Fast forward to 2023, which is where we're at right now. And let me get myself out of the way so you guys can see this GovWin update, which provides a indication that the OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, has now set the FY23 goal for small and disadvantaged business spending at 12% and on the way to 15%. This report also indicates that in fiscal year 2021 that the government exceeded the 11% goal, which was the 2022 goal, by 11.01% or $62.4 billion. And when I looked at those numbers, I said to myself, hey, you know something? Something's fishy about those numbers, right? They don't exactly reconcile to the numbers that are actually reported. If you go to sam.gov and you look at the small business numbers, which we will in just a moment, but I thought that this report was pretty comprehensive. It was pretty directional in terms of the intent of the federal government, right? It is the federal government's intention to adhere to the president's promise to make 15% of the federal contracting budget available to small disadvantaged businesses, wink, wink, including black and brown people. But it's not enough to know that these kinds of changes have occurred in the theater during this particular season. And you're going to hear this from me a lot in 2023. It is critical in this season that you not only know that these things are happening, but that you have the know how in order to take advantage of them. And so, first of all, let's take a look at the numbers because I believe that there are potentially some shenanigans going on, if not some possible bait and switching going on. So, if we go to Beta Sam's, right, and we take a look at the actual report that they deliver on the small business spending in the federal space. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so that you can see it because I'm trying to get you to take a look at the number that's reported in the popular media and what you actually find if you go to the reports. And I'm going to leave the link to this particular report in the description of this video so you can go to it yourself. But I'm going to scroll all the way down to the small disadvantaged business spending percentage. And what you will note is that the percentage that's actually reported is 10.7%, which is a far cry from the 11.1%. That's almost a $2.9 billion deficit. And I'm sure that, some will come to you and say, hey, that deficit, that difference, oh, you couldn't see the number because it was hidden behind my head. Some will come to you and say that that deficit was a result of the fact that DOD's numbers are a laggard and so on and so forth. But in point of fact, the official number for fiscal year 2021 until it's changed is 10.7%. I also have it under good authority that the 11% goal that was set for fiscal year 2022 was missed, was grossly missed. And now you have agencies with all hands on deck to try to figure out what they can do to achieve this goal that I'm referring to as unobtainium because of the simple fact that the promise is connected to a hard problem. But you all know me, right? I have a history of being a problem solver, right? I've had a long history of coming up with solutions to the hard problems that face the small disadvantaged business community, that face the people that I refer to as members of my fraternity. And in this instance, nothing is different. And so what I'm going to take you through is a quick understanding of the know-how that you need to take full advantage of this market opportunity that the president has actually made available to those of you who study yourself approved. And what I've done, for those of you who have not got the memo, I've kind of stuck one foot back into the advocacy space, right? I left the advocacy space after we achieved the 3% spending goal for the disabled veterans and went back into my private practice. But once this hard problem hit the street, I saw no better utilization of my patriotic duty but to come back and help the country achieve this goal for Black and brown businesses. And in point of fact, the lead guide on carriers for this particular opportunity is going to be our minority veteran business community. And as a result of that, I've gone through the process of taking the extra step of working with some key stakeholders to create a minority veteran business training institute so that my fraternity members could have the know-how to achieve the goal. You all know my history, right? My pedigree precedes me here, but I'll put a link to my bio in the description for those of you who need that kind of information. Suffice to say, I've been providing additional patriotic service to this country, to this great nation, for the better part of 20 years as I help the disabled veteran business community move their contracting in the federal space from just north of 750 million, which is where it was when I connected to it, to well north of 19 billion, which is where it was when I went back into my private practice. And I was able to achieve that because we did not have these barriers. We did not have these challenges in law to overcome. And so I talked to you a little bit ago about the hard problem that is affecting the promise that the president's made. It's a result of these three pieces of case law, right? All you got to do is go read any one of these case laws and you find precedent in law that makes it impossible, makes it illegal for agencies to do race-based set-aside. And so as a result of that, any real attempt by an agency to do race-based set-aside is going to be met with the headwind that will come out of the agency's own legal office as they point their attention to the fact that cases like Rothy versus Department of Defense have made it illegal to do race-based set-aside. And that is the primary reason that what yesterday was a SBA certifying process, and for those of you who are old enough to remember, you used to actually have to apply for the small disadvantaged business status. Now it's a self-certifying status. You know why it's self-certifying? Because of these provisions of law. These provisions of law make it illegal for the agency to do a direct contracting action with a minority, or should I say, a black or brown or ethnic group. And as a result of that, it creates a hard problem for the promise that the president has made. This hard problem is not dissimilar to the hard problem that we faced with the disabled veteran business community. And as a result of that, what I have done, I have put together a minority veteran business training institute. I'm working together with my friends over at EDAC from Morgan State University, which is an HBCU there in Maryland, and the Sierra Vista Dream Center out of Arizona, and all of these other little partners, right? The Minority Business Development Agency's Federal Procurement Center has got a What Works strategy. It's a baseline training. So we've cobbled all of these assets together to produce a solution that is going to help him and her who bore the battle, who happens to be small disadvantaged business, win contracts under the president's promise. And I'm going to talk to you about the how, but before we go forward and talk about the how, I want to give you a brief peek into a similarly situated challenge that I and a cadre of patriots help the government overcome, which is similarly situated to the problem that we're experiencing right now. And I'm talking specifically about Public Law 10650, right? The 3% spending goal for disabled veterans. What a lot of you may not know is that when that law was passed, it was passed without the same tools that I'm speaking to right now. That law was passed in 1999, which created a 3% contracting goal for veterans, disabled veterans, but it did not include any of the tools that the contracting officers are accustomed to using. There was no sole source contracting capability. There was no set aside capability. There was no opportunity to provide preferential treatment to the disabled veterans. Similarly situated to what the small disadvantaged business, especially the black and brown community, is experiencing right now. So what we did was we worked through the legislative process and aggressively caused them to put in place those tools under Public Law 108-183. But the battle didn't stop there, because although the tools were in place, we're talking about a contracting community that tends to be risk adverse. So we had to promulgate a number of other legislations. We had to popularize new policy approaches like the joint venturing business model, which is something that I'm known for socializing or popularizing in the lexicon of federal contracting. And even after we got those things in place, we had agencies that bore our surname, like the Veterans Administration under Public Law 109-461, which is affectionately referred to as the Vet's First Law, aggressively resisting the plain letter of the law. So we had to fight that particular battle all the way through the Supreme Court with Aldevra and Kingdomware to get, again, the agency that bears our surname to comply with the law. The point that I'm trying to make for those of you who have eyes to see and ears to hear, these kinds of transfers of wealth, because that's what we're talking about here, don't occur without a struggle. But if you have the proper know-how, you have the proper relationships and resources, you can get it done. And as a matter of fact, we did get it done. And I acquired so much knowledge in this small business contracting space that when the Obama administration in 2010 was putting together their seminal jobs creation legislation, they tapped your boy to come in and help co-author the contracting section of that particular legislation. And it's in that contracting section, or should I say portion of the law, that I actually wrote the precursor to what today is the All Small Business Mentor Protege Program. And for those of you that are fact checkers, contact Senator Olympia Snowe, right? Contact Senator Landrieu's office, and they will tell you that the ball guy is the one that contributed that seminal, that critical piece of language to that contracting section. But be that as it may, my point that I'm trying to make for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear is that there is a solution that we can put in place that will cause the Black and brown small disadvantaged business community to enjoy the same type of successful outcome that we experience within the disabled veteran business community. And I'm here to help usher that in, because I know that we've already put all of the laws, policies, and procedures in place to move the contracting landscape in the federal space from its equity position, from its equality position, where you got equality in contracting, to its equity position, where everybody has an even and equal seat at the table. And all of those maneuvers, all of those adjustments that we made in legislation empowered the organic resources, the organic small disadvantaged business resources in your community and my community with a superpower. And that superpower allows them to take full advantage of not just the $100 billion that the president is promising under the 15% increase, but it also gives them an uber advantage in the existing $1.2 trillion worth of contracts that are available for him and her who's wise enough to understand the how you take advantage of something like this. And everything that we're talking about, again, pivots and is predicated on a simple strategy that I didn't invent. I didn't introduce this strategy of joint venturing into the federal space. All I did was fight the good fight of popularizing it. So back in 2001, 2002, when we were talking joint venturing to contracting officers, we fought the bloody fight to get this language, to get this capability to become common knowledge in the federal contracting arena. And as a result of that, the small disadvantaged businesses who are looking to take advantage of the president's promise can springboard off of our legacy performance to get it done. As I said, I recently put one leg back into the advocacy arena. And what you're looking at on the screen here was our introduction of the grant for the Federal Procurement Center back in November of 2021. And you see me there briefing the then acting director of MBDA on the solution that we were going to employ towards helping the minority businesses across these United States capture their desired share of that $1.2 trillion. Unbeknownst to us, right? While we were there preparing to celebrate the introduction of this new grant, a winner, and his name is Keith Moore, for those of you who don't know Mr. Moore, Congress was going back into session to vote on the Infrastructure Act. And within that Infrastructure Act, there was a provision that for the first time in the 56-year history of the Minority Business Development Agency, 56, 54, somewhere in that arena, made that agency a permanent agency in law, with a cabinet level undersecretary, its own budget, and the capability to help minority businesses in a way that heretofore hadn't happened in these United States of America. So from my perspective, not only those changes that we're talking about here, but there have been a number of other changes that I'll talk to you about moving forward, like the introduction of the permanent DoD mentor protege program. And that's near and dear to my heart because I've got about 30 clients right now. All of these clients do more than $100 million a year with the Department of Defense. And so they qualify for mentor protege that are looking for active proteges. So those of you who are out there saying, I can't find a mentor who wants to work with me, holla at your boy. I can help you get connected with a high quality organization. And we're going to talk about that during the next installment of this particular Patriot report of mine. But the point that I'm trying to make here is very simply, I'm back in the game, folks. I'm back in the advocacy game, and I'll be doing my level best to help him and her who is really interested in changing this game to take full advantage of the $100 billion that the president has put on the street as a result of his promise to black and brown people at the 100th centennial of the Wall Street Massacre, the Black Wall Street Massacre in Tulsa, Oklahoma, as well as take full advantage of the other $1.2 trillion that I'll show you we have a competitive advantage against. But again, in this season, it is not enough for you to know that the creek has rocked and the wind has blown and you've got advantages that are out there in your favor. In this season, it's absolutely critical that you have the know-how to take advantage of those particular opportunities. So as a result of that, I've reached into my grab bag of partners, right? Those people that are best in class solution providers. And I say, y'all, come on now, because we've got a new mission to undertake. So let me introduce you to the first contributor to the solution that you all are going to need to drive that wealth transfer into a relationship with your family. And I'm not mincing words with this, folks. I'm talking about that kind of, thorough digits, right? Not ghetto digits, thorough digits, the kind of money that will empower you with the ability to entrust the wealth, to entrust 5 generations of your family if you do it right. I'm going to introduce you to my good friend, Jack Sani. Jack Sani is the co-founder of GovSpend, and he actually purchased an asset that we use to move the needle in contracting for the disabled veterans from that $750 million point to over $19 billion. And fortunately, Jack has given us a favorable position with his asset. But without further ado, let me stop bumping my chops. Let me jump out of the way here and introduce you to my good friend, Jack Dasani. Jack, take it away, my brother. Hey, thanks for sticking with me through that break. We're starting a new segment, and you guys have met some of my other subject matter experts from the Native American community, from the policy community, and you've met Ramona, who is our poster child or example of success. But none of these successes occur, right? None of these people are enabled without having the proper information to make quality decisions on. And that information is it's enriched by the quality of the data. My first guest, or my guest today, is an individual that owns, I like to refer to him as the king of the acquisition data universe. He owns his finger on the pulse of where acquisition data moves. And I know this firsthand because I met this young man, and humor me for a minute while
I appreciate you calling me young.
No problem, Jack. I'll give you all the accolades. The check is in the mail. But I actually met this new friend as he was going through the process of acquiring a long-standing solution that I and the disabled veterans who moved that needle in contracting to over 19 billion use to accomplish that goal. And I was a little bit concerned because I didn't know if this guy was some kind of a propeller head or an opportunist that was trying to take advantage of a good thing. But when I peel back the layers of the onion, what I learned was not only was Jack steeped in acquisition knowledge, but he also had a unique affinity for a group that I'm wedded to, and that's the small business community. So when I thought of someone who could come in and represent that, amorphous moving body, which is acquisition data and how you mine it and how you use it to inform the sales process, I couldn't think of a better guy than my good friend Jack, because Jack always tells me sales never sleeps. Jack, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for that intro, Walter. Great to be here. I'm looking forward to our time together today.
No problem. Now, I can tell the audience that you are one of the co-founders of GovSales. I'm sorry,
GovSpend, yep.
GovSpend. Sorry, I have to get that corrected. But I don't want to talk about how you became the captain of that universe. I want to talk about Jack, the person, right? Give me a little bit of an idea of your background and how you evolved into this acquisition management space.
Sure, sure. I appreciate that. Yeah, I don't think anyone starts their career and says, "Oh, I want to be in government procurement or government sales." I think it evolves for all of us. And so when I graduated my undergrad, I had the opportunity to go work for NavAir on the government side. So didn't really know what I wanted to do in life. I had my management business degree, and NavAir came in and recruited at the university I was at. Amazing opportunity. So I was in the Washington D.C. area. And believe it or not, my first job was on the F-18 fighter jet program. Just by coincidence, it's where I got placed. And my first day ever in the real world, a quick little story. At that time, I think Iraq had invaded Kuwait, and we were selling F-18 fighter jets to Kuwait at that time. So I had the chance to sit on this project management meeting. And so they're at this huge table, whatever you like, just in a movie, like a Star Wars movie, long table, all these generals, and they're showing these pictures of the invasion and some of the damage that was done in Kuwait. And they take a break, and this general walks over to me. I'm in a suit and a tie, first day at work, first day in the real world, graduated college 3 months ago. And he's like, he gets out his set of pictures back in the day. It was like when you got a Kmart, your pictures developed. He had all these pictures of the damage that was at his Air Force base. And, he's sharing them with me. I'm like, I have no power here. But that was my introduction to the government procurement sales world as we started to sell F-18 fighter jets to the country of Kuwait back then. And so I worked for NavAir for 4 years. And really that was my journey into government procurement, into government sales, and obviously saw the enormous opportunity that was there, some of the challenges that are involved in that. And for the last 20 years, I've really been on the private industry side, helping that process be more efficient, both helping the government sell better and use our tax dollars better, and helping companies do business with the government in a more efficient, effective way. So that's kind of the brief overview.
So let me ask you to answer the $64 million question that most neophytes out there ask when they're looking at these data analytics tools, right?
Yep.
Why should one pay for a data analytics tool when you have other solutions out there like GovSpend or the federal procurement data system? I mean, how would you answer that hard question to a neophyte that says, hey, this one's free?
Yeah, I think it's fair. We get that question. That the federal government, without a doubt, puts out some free data sets. I would just say in my interaction with anyone, when I talk to them about either an RFP system or a data system or some of the other systems that there's a fee for, when somebody always says to me, "Hey, I use FPDS or USAspending.gov or SAM.gov," I'm like, "Well, hey, do you use that? Do you go in there and you download the data and run the analytics and what have you?" And I would just say 90+% of the time, the person I'm speaking with is like, "Oh, no, we have a data analyst or a set of analysts, or I have some, really detailed technical person that takes the raw data, does some manipulation, and then serves it up to me in a report." And so I would just say that in my world, then that's not free, right? As soon as you need a data analyst, pay them X. If you need multiple, pay them Y. And then they typically need to drop that data in a reporting system. It's just in this world, the analogy I'll just give you, it's like buying a car. You kind of get what you pay for. So you can get a smart car, one of those little cars. You know, if you get in a car accident, they'll just put you in the ground in it. Or you can buy a Lamborghini and everything in between. And I think for folks just to think about, what do you need? Because there is a time and a place where you just need free data. God bless. You know, you just have a report to run, and maybe that checks the box for you. Totally cool. Like, there's not one solution that works all the time for everybody. But if you need an analytical model, or if you're trying to do a deep dive, or if you have a strategic initiative, or if you have a big sales team that's chasing government business, to do it in a non-informed way, I would just say it's very, 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 very inefficient. And so our goal is to help folks do it in a more efficient way, because doing business with the government can already be challenging. But if we can use data and some background information to help improve the process, we have found over the last decade, it has an enormous impact to both businesses and government agencies.
And full disclosure, I have to share this with the audience. I am a user of the FedMine program. I said that up at the top. The people that I teach and instruct have used this thing to take down billions of dollars worth of contracts.
Yeah.
So we're going to bring them in to show you empirical examples of, why it's important for you to have quality, and this is important, data at that point of decision. But
Yeah.
I want to pivot a little bit now into this whole question about the small disadvantaged business spend, right? I'm hyper focused on specifically helping the minority veteran and the minority business community capture their lion's share of that 100 billion the president promised. And I'm also being affected by some new information that I got about a court case called, I believe it's the Tolliver case, which found the DOD out of balance for taking requirements and skipping the market research process and going directly to these best-in-class contracts. So based on my understanding, there is a ruling that will come out that will change that policy. And based on SBA's estimation, if that policy was in place in the previous fiscal year, another $13 billion would have been made available for small disadvantaged businesses. So if we've got the president's promise of 100 billion and we got a new 13 billion coming online, my question is, how could these small disadvantaged businesses use your tool to prepare themselves to identify requirements that today are bundled that could be potentially unbundled? I mean, how can they use your solution and your tool to get at that analytics?
Yeah, great question. Appreciate that. And to connect some dots for the folks watching the video, there's our company was GovSpend, and over the last year and a half, as Walter mentioned, we acquired FedMine, and so we're really meshing those two organizations and going to market. You'll see that as GovSpend, and you could still use the FedMine product within that. So just as a context for the folks watching this video. And so, yeah, I'd say the biggest thing is, like all things in life, it's about having the data so you strategically go after opportunities. So Walter and I have spoke a lot of times. I always say this: if you're, as a company, or your sales reps have let's just make it really simple, two agencies they're chasing, right? And they're both good. Like, just say theoretically, one's the city of Chicago and one's the city of New York, right? So there's two opportunities. They're big agencies with big opportunities. Well, if one of those cities has used the same vendor for the last 10 years straight, they've done RFPs, they put some stuff out, but you see in their awards, it's the same vendor for the last 10 years. The other agency has chosen a different vendor or a set of vendors over the last 10 years. They've changed vendors. They've had some new entities in there. Which opportunity represents a real opportunity for your company, right? The one that's had the same vendor for 10 years, or the one that's had different vendors, right? Clearly, it's the second one, right? And what happens in government sales, we don't normally know that. On the outside, we see an RFP, we see something posted, we find out about an opportunity, we think, oh, I'm going to go after it. It's a great agency, it's in my wheelhouse, it's my product, round peg, round hole. Well, the reality is, if you don't know the history of that agency and how they've purchased and who they've used, you may be chasing it really at your own peril. The chances that agency is going to displace that vendor they've used for 10 years and now go to a new vendor is very small. They have the bid RFP or they have the opportunity out on the street, really to administratively check some box. It's really what they're doing. I'd say that really lovingly, but by the way, as a quick sidebar, we all do that. We all don't go to the cheapest gas station. We don't all use the cheapest product. We have things we have affinity towards. So no shot at the government. When they have a vendor that's doing good work and they've used them a long time, they want to keep doing that, right? But it's probably not a real opportunity for you as a company. But using data and the ability to look at what's been purchased before and the history of that agency, this opportunity over here is a real opportunity. They've proven that they'll bring in a new vendor. They'll look at other solutions. They'll altruistically analyze what's happening. You have a much better shot at this opportunity. And so in that analogy, that's what I would tell you that GovSpend and what we're doing with Walter is trying to share with folks. Look, it's like the Wizard of Oz. Look behind the curtain, see what's happened historically, use that information so that your team and your company pursues opportunities that are real opportunities. You have a real chance of winning. And so that's what, at a high level, I would tell you that's the biggest part, that the data, that information can do for folks. That's very different. It's really changed in the last 7 or 8 years. Folks have been using bid and RFP systems for years. We're really not talking about that. We're talking about data behind the scenes to see how agencies are purchasing, the vendors they're using, and actually some insights into the pricing to help you strategically chase business that actually you could win.
And Jack, what you said, actually, there are two key words that I want to pull out of that statement that you talked about, or two key concepts. One is peering behind the curtain, right, to see what is actually happening. And then you use the concept of real world, right, versus theoretical, right? Because you get a lot of theoretical nonsense, I like to call it, in some of these free programs and offering. And since we're about real world, we're about giving the listeners and viewers tactical information that they can walk away with. What I'd like to do in our next segment is I'd like to take that idea or that concept that you just talked about, the scenario, and I'd like to break it down in a real world example where we can run it through an interface with the system and show how the system could produce the decision support data in a more efficient fashion, and maybe juxtapose that up against one of these, freeware systems. Because at the end of the day, and this is to you, my viewer, right, our listening audience, we want you to have the full body of knowledge that you need to make an informed decision in every area that you're operating within.
So true.
And this area in this season of contracting is the most critical area, because it's not enough in this season for you to know that there are contracting advantages out there, that the president's put a 15% goal on the street, yada yada yada. In this season, it's critical that you have the know-how to access that stuff in an actionable fashion. And it's tools like the ones that my good friend Jack delivers to the market that's going to make that happen for you. So Jack, can we put together that scenario example for the family next time around?
Yeah, 100%. And I'd love to add, Walter, really quick, especially over the next couple of years, we all know where we are kind of economically in the country, and the high inflation rates. And so doing business with the government, that opportunity that represented, even if folks had passed on that historically, probably going to be very critical over the next couple of years. The government's still going to spend a ton of money. And unlike private sector, who really has been retrenching, it's going to be harder. The government represents an enormous opportunity. And so again, our goal, I think, is to help folks do it more strategically and have success versus being frustrated by some of the intricacies and red tape that could be involved.
So the last thing we need to do, Jack, I think, is come up with a name for this segment, right? And one of the concepts that I've been playing around with as a name is data bites.
Sure.
A play on the word, because if you've got good quality data, right, that helps inform your sales process, it lets you take a bite out of the industry.
Amen. Amen. I think that's what everybody wants, right? We all see it, like, how can I do it well, or how can I do it efficiently? And I think that's the amazing part about what we're about to serve up to folks, is doing it strategically. So you don't have to wait 18 months. It doesn't have to be a 3 years from now we'll win something. We'll actually help folks get out of the gate well. So
excellent. Well, you guys join us on the next installment, where I said we will unpack this scenario and show you an empirical example of how it works. We are industry, and we're here because, as my good friend Jack always says, sales never sleep. Till next time, Walter Cotton saying, I'm out. Well, the FedMine tool that's under the family of GovSpend. You all are going to learn a whole bunch about that, and I know that it's going to be a blessing in your life. You know, that's about all I have for this inaugural taping, this inaugural airing of my Patriot Report. Until, well, what are we going to do next time? Next time, we're going to talk about the changes that have occurred to the DoD mentor protege program. And the reason that we're going to talk about that is because they made the program permanent. And I have a client that is aggressively looking for small disadvantaged business proteges that they can mentor under that program, or the SBA's All Small Business Mentor Protege program, or guess what? The new Mentor Protege program that has come online under Homeland Security. All that and everything you've ever wanted to know about Mentor Protege, but were afraid to ask during the next installment of my Patriot Report. Until then, this is Walter Cotton saying, I'm out. Welcome to the Ability to movement. You have one of three options. You can subscribe, request an invitation, or log in if you're a returning member. Welcome to the Ability to movement. You have one of three options. You can subscribe, request an invitation, or log in if you're a returning member.
Cause now I'm at the bank with it. And for those that count me out, can see me counting up. Cause now I'm